to you. This is episode 2, part 2, episode 2, whatever you want to call it, part 2 of healing from PTSD. If you haven't watched the first video yet, I do recommend it. It's not required. Each one can stand on their own because I'll be chunking my story into different aspects and different modalities that I've experienced. The last one just described what PTSD is and some little tiny bit of background about myself and my journey. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm going to try and speak a little louder, but my kids are asleep, so I may just have to up the volume post-production. Asleep in the other room, obviously, but got some little ambiance, got my candle. Ooh, she's going good right now. Confidence spell. Yeah, so getting right to it. Actually, I think I want to adjust this level a bit. Okay. Let's take a big breath. Yes, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So, this episode is going to be mainly about my first experience with cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and that started for me in 2011 after I went through a situation while I was a manager at a very popular coffee shop corporation. I had to fire an employee for a violent act towards a homeless person, and that employee in turn turned around and started threatening me, first online and then in person, attempted to do actual physical harm, and yeah, it was really gnarly. Had to go through a whole thing of restraining order, changing stores, lots of disruption to my life. And what I found was that it activated me to a point of anxiety and depression and fear. I guess the fear goes with the anxiety, but just the deepest state of fear I have ever felt, ever. And when it first happened, a lot of it was psychological because of the buildup, but I was getting phone calls almost every day after the physical incident when he tried to come into the store and get to me. And I was getting phone calls saying, I'm gonna fucking kill you, I know where you live, I'll always know where to find you, all kinds of shit. So pretty gnarly stuff. But after the initial thing happened and the repetitive phone calls happened, we had, because the initial experience was so traumatic for me and my team, when he tried to incite physical violence, they actually had a therapist. The company brought in a therapist and counselor who worked with people that survived 9/11. And that woman was incredible. I don't remember her name, but she did like crisis counseling on site for us. And then from there, I was lucky enough to have 8 sessions, 8 weeks, 1 session each week with a traditional therapist, licensed clinical therapist. And this therapist was hilarious and perfect for me. And it was my first time ever being in therapy. And at the time I was, how old? 26? Oh yeah, so 10 years ago. Whoa. 2011, yep, it's 2021. Whoa. Although it would have been in May of 2011. So we're not quite there yet, but just about 10 years, a decade later, which is wild even to say out loud. Time is very timey-wimey. And her biggest success through cognitive behavior therapy with me through those 8 weeks was she helped me realize that I had done nothing wrong, even though my employer had made me feel like I had done things wrong, and obviously this person who threatened me also made me feel like I had done things wrong. And she was hilarious because she didn't give a fuck about what she looked like, how she presented. Like, the woman wore sweats with like socks and sandals, just crazy frizzy gray hair, but she was brilliant, and she made it so comfortable, and I could say anything, and we just talked through it. And that a lot of is that cognitive behavioral therapy. You talk through it, and the therapist has the training and the insight to be able to point out things in your language and ask you questions that help you dive deeper into that inquiry, so that you can start to have realizations and process through your feelings. And it worked well for me, just being able to talk through it at first. And there are things about us as humans that even when we start to assign language to our experiences, that can start the healing process. And so in that way, for me, at being somebody, obviously I have a YouTube channel, I like to talk, I enjoy conversation, and there's power in storytelling. And there are actually the left side of our brain deals more with language and reading and writing, and when we experience traumatic events, that part of our brain kind of shuts down, and we literally do not have the ability to assign language to our experiences until we do. And sometimes that's just time. Sometimes, a lot of times, it takes professional help to help pull that out of you, or guide that out of you, or allow you to safely reflect and have a space with which to talk it through, to where you're not just talking yourself into a deeper hole of anxiety or depression. Because the thing about our brains and our neural pathways is that the thoughts we continue to keep thinking, and our beliefs are just thoughts we keep thinking, right? Decisions, all these things, and some of them we didn't even decide on. They were handed, a lot of them were handed down to us by our family, by society, our genetics, our ancestral lineage, both in behavior, programming, experiences, all of it. And then on a like physiological genetic level, we are imprinted with generations of experiences while we were single cell organisms in our grandmother's, well, in our mom's belly, in our grandmother's belly. I mentioned this in episode 1 or part 1 of this, but it's so important. And this was such a huge realization to me, that not only was I carrying my own trauma, but I was also carrying generations, because it just makes so much more sense that it's this generational weight. And you talk to any indigenous or person of color, indigenous person or person of color, and you will know, I mean, there is so much generational trauma that is on the backs and shoulders and hearts and souls of these people. And it's palpable when you hear their stories, when you talk to them and you give them that space to speak. And it is incredible, and it is incredibly healing to learn how to tell your story. And therapists, traditional therapists, can help you do that. They can help you put it into a framework that helps you understand and come to some clarity. And really it's about building self-mastery and self-understanding. And when you're really in a place of being completely dysfunctional or non-functional, like I could not go to work. I could not go out and drive and feel safe at that time, because I was always looking behind me thinking that this person that wanted to kill me was going to be wherever I showed up. And so after the 8 weeks, I felt pretty good. I felt like, okay, I feel like I can function. And again, at the time, this was a free 8 weeks that I got from work, or complimentary, I guess. And then I didn't think that I needed any more therapy. My friends, for most people, at least not for me, 8 weeks was not enough. And as time went by after that, I really began to realize how much I was still struggling. And there's a lot to that, and I'm at about the 10-minute mark. I want to keep this pretty short since they're pretty heavy topics, but it took me another 6 years after that initial therapy experience to sign up for another therapist. And during that time, I focused on my art a bit. I started painting again, but the painting actually started back when I had my snowboarding experience. Okay, so maybe I'll back up a little bit. So right before the death threats, I had a physical accident. I had already had a massive trauma to my body. This was 2009, so 2 years before. I've mentioned this before in my videos, but I am a little dyslexic, so I get things backwards, or the timeline will be a little wonky on all these PTSD videos, but also our memories are just kind of that way, and we make associations that aren't always in a linear time, and really time is relative and timey-wimey, like we say, like the doctor. So in 2009, at the point that I was in, I had just become a manager like the year before for the company that I was working for. I felt like I was pretty successful. I had been working out, I had been eating pretty well. I kind of felt like, okay, I'm 24. Yeah, I was 24 at the time, at the peak of my physical ability, at the peak of my ego, was drinking a lot, and more in the like kind of party scene drinking. And we went snowboarding up in Mammoth, and I had been drinking, and we decided to go on the terrain park with all of the jumps and slopes and half pipes and all those kind of things. And the first 2 times I rode through it, landed everything because I was going slow and cautious. A little more Rumpelmann's liquid courage, 100 proof alcohol in the flask, on top of Bloody Marys that I had had. Like, should not have been on the mountain. I was like, I'm gonna go faster. I'm gonna go so much faster. And everybody was like, okay, that I was with. We're like, let's do it. And we were getting kind of competitive, and you know, I'm naturally kind of competitive. And in the beginning of this border cross terrain park was a tabletop jump, where it's not really a jump, it's just like ramping up your speed and getting you to go faster to hit all the other things. And so it literally goes like up like this, flat, and then a slope down. And you're just supposed to ride over it and get speed, like I said. It was spring conditions. This was March 31st, 2009. And I went full tilt down this little slope, up the little ramp to this tabletop, and I popped right into the air. And then I was up in the air, realizing, oh shit, I should not be up in the air like this. Remembering what my husband taught me when he taught me how to snowboard like 7 or 8 years prior, which was how to fall. To do like a football kind of fall where you wrap your arms, your hands, and you kind of brace your body and fall into it. Everything went slow-mo, and I was falling back in the air with my spine actually to that flat part of the tabletop jump. And I remember thinking, I'm not ready to die. Please don't let this be it. Please don't let this be it. And I curled into a little ball and I turned to the left. And it was a good thing I did, because as I turned to the left, all my body weight impact went into my upper left arm and broke it. Didn't know it at the time, but I just heard the loud crunch of me and all my gear. And then my hips hit and my snowboard hit. And I was like, it was a total out of body experience. I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs, and it doesn't even sound like me screaming. And then I had a buddy behind me that was training to be an EMT, and him thinking he was being helpful, he came up and grabbed my arm and said, oh, I think your shoulder is dislocated. And so he picks up my arm, he goes like this to try and relocate it, and then he puts the arm down, and at this point shock has set in, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't, like, my arm feels like it's swinging, but I see it and it's just sitting here, but it feels like it's going like this. I'm like, that can't be good. And then ski patrol comes up and I get put on the toboggan and I get slid out. And we go to the hospital and find out that I not only had fractured my upper humerus up here, about right below the shoulder, but I had also fractured my pelvis in 2 places. And so I was actually and my arm like swelled up like 2 times its size. And so I was unable to stand or walk on my own for about a month. And then it took about 6 months for my arm to recover, but they did surgery about a month after the break because it started to heal so wonky and I had a big old bump. So they went in, put in a steel plate, 7 screws. One of my best friends calls me 7 bolt sometimes because of it. And my daughter says I have a robotic arm. Actually, I kind of told her I have a robotic arm because of it. So kind of a cool thing now. But what was interesting about that time was that really started the process of my introspection and doing the mental and emotional work that I needed to do in my life, because I physically could not do anything else. And it also brought into the forefront of my mind all the memories and trauma and associations with my dad's illness of Lou Gehrig's disease when he was in a wheelchair and unable to care for himself when I was 13 and 14. And so that month, even though it's only a month, to have help to get up and go pee, to not be able to shower yourself, to clean yourself, to not be able to put my hair up. I couldn't even put my hair in a ponytail because I only had one arm functionality. But what I could do was I could paint. And so my husband would set up my easel and I would paint. Luckily it was my right hand was okay. My left arm was the damaged one. And that was what I did. It got me through. And then once I could stand and walk, I used the Nintendo Wii board and the Wii Sports to start regaining my balance and control back. But I remember thinking, like, I want to be able to do yoga. I want to be able to do different things with my body, and this can't be the end. And so my mind was a big part of that. And then when I had this experience with the death threat, it really brought up even more all that fear of loss of life, my own life and others. And it got to a big tipping point actually while I was pregnant. So I got pregnant in 2015. 2015, and had my daughter in March of 2016. And that whole experience will be my next part 3 video, and I will talk about postpartum depression combined with PTSD, and combined with loss and grief and that fear of loss, and how I worked through that in my second experience with CBT therapy. So that's gonna be the next episode. So to wrap up this one, there are some resources for CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, that I can put in, and I will put in the description for you. There is an app called Sunvello that is great. If you have PPO insurance, you can actually get through to your provider through the Sunvello app, through PPO, and find a therapist that would work with PPO. If you have like an HMO, there's not a lot of availability. I have Kaiser, and it says that there's an option for it, but it doesn't really work through. But I have gone through Kaiser, and I'm currently going through Kaiser right now for therapy. So if you have questions, put a comment below. You can also email me. I will put my, excuse me as I burp, I will put my email in the description below as well. And I will also put some of my favorite meditation apps. And then I'm also going to put a link actually in for a YouTube video that talks about doodling, because art, I believe in the power of art and the healing power of art, And even if you think you're not artistic or you don't have a talent for it, like any talented artist has put in a lot of fucking hours to build that talent. Yeah, some of us start when we're really, really early and have talent for it, but it's also the time investment, it's the skill investment. Any master has put time into their craft, and it's just taking the time. But there's a video that I love, a TED Talk on doodling and how drawing can change your life, and I'll link that in the video below too. So yeah, that's it for now. Part 3 will be coming soon. I'm gonna go to sleep, finish my tea. I'm gonna show you this awesome mug that my jewelry mentors got me. I don't know if you can see it. It's a calamity mug, I think it's called, or it's like things could be worse mug. And so it shows like pterodactyls and UFOs and all kinds of incredible things, and it has that classic fancy China, I don't see, robots. I think there's a poodle in there somewhere. Yeah, poodle, massive poodle. So cheers to you, cheers to your healing journey. Thanks for joining the Nebula Vibe and joining me for a little conversation. And again, part 3 will come soon. Next will most likely be a reading coming up here for, I think, the full moon. Yeah, I think that'll be the next thing. Maybe part 3 first. We will see how it goes. I have signed up for some classes, so I'm balancing that right now, as well as full-time work and being a mom of 2 and a wife and a friend and all the things. So, but it's a pandemic, so we got time to make things happen and put content out there. So I love you all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want to see more videos, readings, or more of this. I'd love to hear in the comments below if there's any specific questions you have about CBT, or any of my other experiences, and then I will see you in the next video. Bye. 3, 2, 1. Daxion. Lights, camera, action. Daxion. Lights, camera, action. Okay, let's see how this goes.